I'm Scott. In this video, I'm going to go over how to replace an alternator in a riding lawnmower that's powered by a Briggs Stratton engine. In this video, I'll cover the process I used to identify the alternator as a part that needed to be replaced. This process I'm getting ready to cover can be used in most riding lawnmowers that are powered by Briggs Stratton engines. I also covered the voltage regulator. In a Briggs Stratton engine that's used in riding lawnmowers, the alternator is located underneath the flywheel. I'll go over the process on how to remove your flywheel from your Briggs Stratton engine. I'll go over the parts I used and the tools I needed to use to complete this project. I'll go over the costs and what I spent to accomplish replacing the alternator on my Briggs Stratton engine. All right, let's get started. The mower I'll be working on in this project is my 2003 Craftsman lawn tractor, the electric start, automatic transmission, and a 42-inch deck. This mower is equipped with the Briggs Stratton engine, 18.5 horsepower. The model number and the type can seem printed on top of the valve covers. The voltage regulator is part of the electrical system that charges the battery. It's cheap at 13 bucks. It's easy to get to and replace, and it often fails, so I went ahead and replaced it as part of this project. The alternator, along with the voltage regulator, are the key components of the electrical system that charges the battery. When the battery quits charging, it's one of these two components normally. People will replace the cheap voltage regulator, but they don't want to replace this more expensive part that's kind of difficult to get to. In order to get to the alternator, you need to remove the flywheel. In order to remove the flywheel, you need a flywheel removal tool. The main symptom on my mower was the amp meter was showing 0 or a negative number. A negative number means the battery's being drained. That amp meter should be positive, saying the battery's being charged. Based on the troubleshooting chart in my owner's manual, there are 4 reasons why my battery would not charge. I checked out the battery. It was bad actually, so I need a new battery, but all the cabling was correct. So the issue must be with the voltage regulator, but I swapped it out with a good one. So now I knew it was my alternator. So this project is to replace my alternator. This video clip shows how I have my trickle charger set up to my bad battery, just so I could charge it to get through this part of the project, so I don't have to buy a new battery till next spring. The voltage regulator is cheap and easy to replace, so I went ahead and did that just to verify it wasn't a problem before I spent the bigger money and the bigger time and the bigger effort on replacing the alternator. These next few pictures show the different parts of the engine that I had to remove in order to gain access to the flywheel. Later on in this video, I'll actually show video clips of me reinstalling these pieces of the engine so you get a gist for how long it takes and how much difficulty it takes to get this job done. This section contains a lot of video clips that describes and shows the different processes and procedures it takes to remove the flywheel from your Briggs Stratton engine. Alright, so ordered the Briggs Stratton flywheel removal tool off the internet. Got it on Amazon Prime. I got the one for the overhead valve engine, basically the mower, so it's the large. I'll put a better picture of that, but it's code 19203. So this is the main bracket. It'll sit up here like that, and then it comes with SAE bolts and metric bolts. They're color coded based on the size of the holes you have. Okay, so we've established that these threaded holes in my flywheel. They're SAE, or English threads. So I choose the chrome or silver based bolts instead of the reddish or bronze, which are metric. So threaded a nut on top. We'll use that to actually do the tension. And then I put a nut down here about 1 inch up. I did it at both sides. The bolt here on my flywheel, I have a bolt instead of a nut. The bolt, once I use my pneumatic pop off this, I screwed it all the way down and I backed it off 3 turns. And now I'm just gonna set this on top like this and screw these in. I threaded a nut on the bolt, put the bolt through the pulley, and then I put a nut on the bottom. Be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what this nut on the bottom is for. We're not gonna really use it. It says to put it 1 inch up. I did that. And then I got each of the 2 bolts started in their threaded holes. At that point, you're supposed to screw these bolts 8 turns into your flywheel. So each bolt's got a little notch on it, so that's how I'm using to determine how many times I've threaded it through. So I'm going to screw these in 8 turns each, and I'll do a couple each way, just try to keep them in sequence going down. So there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, and 7, and that's getting tight. So the reason it's tight is because these nuts came down. So I got to loosen those nuts off. So that was 7. That's 8. 7, 8. And then I'm going to just manually bring these nuts down to where it's on the black part. So there we are. It's roughly each side screwed in there 8. So what's important is this black piece here, this pulley needs to be level, because we're going to start tightening these bolts, which is going to press this pulley down and pull the flywheel pulley up like that in sequence. And we want to do it a couple of turns at a time on each one to try to keep this thing level to pull it up. All right, we got the Briggs Stratton flywheel pulley installed on my flywheel. Now we're just going to start tightening these bolts down a couple of turns, and that's going to pull this thing off. When it frees up, it should go pop. We should see it and physically hear it. Okay, so this will, I'm just going to go, that's tight right there. That's half a turn. That's half a turn. Now, if you watch here, as I tighten these bolts, this whole thing's spinning. What's happening is the drive shaft spinning. So I'm going to have to get in a different position where I'm going to hold the drive shaft with a wrench underneath the engine and then tighten these bolts down. All right, so I put my wrench on the drive shaft over here underneath the engine, and I'm going to try to do this again. So just there we go. Oh, there we go. Hopefully you heard it pop. Oh yeah. So get that out from underneath there. So I keep going down. That pop. And when I did it, by the way, I could feel a lot of pressure release, a lot of energy. So it's loose. See how it's loose now? I'll have this off in a second. All right. just pulling it up. At this point, the flywheel is loose, so I'm going to take the flywheel removal off, which is just unscrewing these 2 bolts from the threaded holes in the flywheel. So that comes off. I got to take this nut off. That, remember, I already loosened it with the impact wrench, and then this will pop off. Now, one thing to note in here, there's a flywheel key in here, so I want to make sure I don't lose that, and it wants to come out. All right, so this is off. That's my flywheel. These are all the magnets on the flywheel, and the whole reason I'm doing this flywheel removal, by the way, here is the key. It goes in there like that, and I'm going to take this off. This is the key. I'm going to put it in a safe place because I got to put it back. The key is if you hit your draft shaft on something, it'll shear that key instead of bending. Hopefully it doesn't bend your draft shaft. So you just have to go to the store. You'll have to buy these keys. They're nothing to them, and then you have to remove your flywheel and put the key back in. You're good to go again. But here's my alternator. So this is what I think is faulty, is that it is not charging my battery. So the whole reason I took the flywheel off was to get to this alternator. So by taking the flywheel off, we've now exposed the alternator. The alternator is attached with 4 nuts. Bolts, and it's a 1/4-inch nut driver. I'll take those off. There's also 2 wires coming off the alternator. One is the ground, and then one is a bullet, and it's screwed into the voltage regulator. And then another's the live wire that's got it's a bullet connector that goes to the voltage regulator. And they go through a little harness clip here. I won't show that part of the removal. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll show disconnecting it. Now, if you can tell, this is filthy dirty. This has got dirt, oil, grass, everything in this. I'll clean this up, but I don't see any apparent issues. There's no burn or anything, but this thing is filthy, so we'll replace it with a new one. All right, we have removed the 4 nuts. The 4 bolts from the alternator. They look like that. Removed them with a 1/4-inch nut driver. I store all my loose nuts and bolts and everything, and the drive shaft keys in here. I don't lose them. At this point, the alternator is loose other than those 2 wires. One's the ground that's connected to the cell voltage regulator, and the other one is the live wire that goes to the voltage regulator. Then this just, if you gently, this will just, whoop, there it goes, gently just pulls up. There's that wire I was telling you about. I had to release a bolt for the harness, but I'll take this, I'll go order me another one. It'll come in a couple days. I'll clean all of this up. I'll put the new one in, and we'll put it all back together and see how it runs. All right, I got the brand new alternator. Came in, looks nice, no crispy parts. It's got the one lead to go to the voltage regulator, the bullet connector, and it's a white wire that will match up with the white wire on the voltage regulator. So I'm just going to place this on the post. There's 4 posts. I've cleaned this all up now, and I'm going to put it on the 4 posts. Like so. Then this wire, this yellow wire, I'm going to feed down through a harness, holds the wire in place, and it's down here with plenty of room to get to the bullet connector on the voltage regulator. So the new alternator came with some screws, but I'm going to use these bolts that came off the old one. I like to use the bolts because I can use a nut driver on it. Where the screws, you have to use a Phillips screwdriver, and you run the risk of stripping them out someday if you ever have to take this off years from now. And it's just easier. I think it's so let's put these on. So as the saying goes, these 4 bolts, they're snug but tight. The only other trick is make sure the wire is on the underside. You don't want it to be the wire on the top, so the wire going to the voltage regulator is underneath. And then we just have to make sure this base is called the stator. It's not touching anywhere on the casing, the engine casing. And that all looks good. So we are good to go. All right, next I'm going to install my flywheel. I've cleaned all the grass and crud out of it. This is pretty heavy. It's a magnet, and once I get it close to these magnets on the alternator, it's going to suck it down. So I'm trying to line it up with the key. There's the keyhole on the flywheel and the keyhole right here on the drive shaft. Then once I line it up, then I'll slip my key into it. Right there, I can feel the magnets pulling it down. And there we go. Okay, that's lined up. There's also, so where is the key? The key is in my little parts. Slip that in. Push that down. That is in there. Okay. And then I'm going to take, this is the bolt, keeps my flywheel on. So I'll manually screw that in, hand tighten it. Okay, that's hand tightened. I'm just making sure this freely turns so it doesn't hit any part. Okay, that's good. So now I'm going to take my impact wrench, and it's got a 15/16 socket on it, and I've got it going forward. So to tighten it, put that on there. I can see this moving. And I think it's really supposed to be like 100 pounds of torque. So we are good to go. We'll go to the next step. Just to clarify something, when you're reinstalling the flywheel and you install that flywheel nut or flywheel bolt, and I was using my my impact wrench, I made a statement something about, well, just use your impact wrench. That's great to start off with, but you really need to also use your torque wrench. And you want to set your torque wrench to about 100 pounds of torque. And you want to torque that nut and that bolt down. Right, after we put the flywheel on, we'll put the engine fan. It's a plastic part. It's just got 2 bolts. These bolts will screw into where we had the flywheel removal tool. So it just sits on there like that. These bolts are star bolts. So I have to use a star bit to get them out, to tighten them up. So I'll just put them both in initially by hand. Let's get a little socket. And we'll hand tighten them. Now we'll just use the socket to tighten them down. Snug and firm, no stripping. All right, that's good. After we install the plastic fan housing for the engine, we'll install the grill. And the grill is attached through 4 screws. These are T screws, so I have to use another T-screw bit. And I'll just install these first by hand, manually tighten them down. And it's first Tuesday of the month, so we'll get to hear a siren go off for the emergency broadcast system. Once I hand tighten these 4 screws down, I'll just gotta get my screwdriver attachment to these, and I'll just manually tighten them up. Once again, firm, but I don't want to strip it. The screws are going into something plastic. So one more final. That's tug, tight. Okay, that's done. We'll move on to the next part. The next step is we're going to put the engine cowling on, or the engine housing. This is going to have 2 bolts on the front that are stars, so I'm going to have to use a star socket to drive it, star driver. And then there's 2 in the back that I'll have to tighten up, and then part of the fuel system, the fuel pump, the screw in right here, they'll go on. And then all right, now this is going to be a lot of different parts, moving things around, making sure everything's set right. So I'm not going to film this, I'll just come back. All right, next we're going to install the air filter. And by the way, this is dirty. It's the end of the season, it's fall. When I do my spring maintenance, change the oil, the filter, and the gas filter, the oil filter, the oil. I'll put a new air filter into this. But this will get me through the last couple of weeks of this fall season. And so then I just put the cover on. Snap it close. All right. Next, I'm going to go get a battery. I've got another riding lawnmower, so I'm going to go take the battery from that, plug it in, and we'll see how it goes. The most frustrating thing about this project was the documentation in the manual didn't match up with itself. The parts listing didn't agree with the schematics didn't agree with the explosion charts, the part diagrams didn't agree with the part numbers. Nothing agreed with each other, so I ended up winging it. I just looked at the parts that were already installed on the mower, and I went out on the internet and found pictures of those, and then I got the part numbers for those, and then I ordered those parts. And that's how I finally determined what parts to reinstall on the lawnmower. Alright, that wraps up this video on how to replace an alternator on a Briggs Stratton engine that's used to power a riding lawnmower. The real tricky part of this project was overcoming the documentation for the riding lawnmower and its engine parts, in the schematics, as well as the parts listing, and those parts that were actually installed on the riding lawnmower. They were all in conflict. Another tricky part was removing the flywheel. The alternator is located underneath the flywheel. To get the flywheel off, I had to order another tool, a flywheel removal tool. And this was only $13, so it wasn't a big expense, it's just I didn't have one. Once I got it in, I was able to remove the flywheel and then have access to the alternator. To overcome the conflicts in the documentation, and the schematics and the parts list versus what was installed on the lawnmower, I had 2 paths to take. I could just replace the parts that were on the lawnmower with likewise parts, or I could replace the parts with those that are in the parts listings. I wasn't too confident that the parts in the part listings would work together, and I wasn't too confident that the parts in the parts diagram, the explosion diagram, would work together. So I just decided to replace the parts with those that were already installed on the mower. Using a multimeter and the amp meter gauge on the lawnmower helped me to identify what was the problem, isolate the problem, and also verify that I properly fixed the problem. Hopefully you learned something from this video. Hopefully it will empower you to go out and work on your riding lawnmower, on your Briggs Stratton engine on your riding lawnmower. To get automatic alerts of when I add content to my YouTube channel, click on the red subscribe button below. If you like this video, click on the thumbs up. If you dislike this video, click on the thumbs down. Leave any feedback you have in the comment section below. Alright, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Go out there and cut your grass with your riding lawnmower and that Briggs Stratton engine.